How you doing? I'm Paula O'Sullivan, based in Blessington, County Wicklow in Ireland. I just want to share a few things about how to cope with depression, how to cope with having low self-esteem, and how to cope with being an empath. And these are things that a lot of people would maybe recognize and suffer from. For most of my life, I would have been depressed up to the age of 44. I had low self-esteem probably up to about 2 years ago, and I'm an empath. I only discovered that a few years ago. So these three main things have affected my life in huge ways, but learning how to deal with them has been very important. I'll start with the depression. So I grew up in a family that were very depressed, and I had a brother who was mentally ill. I saw that they were on medication, but I didn't see anyone getting any better. So I stayed off medications. I never even told anybody I was feeling depressed. I didn't want to add to the mix of everyone else. And I tried to cope as best I could. I muddled through. It wasn't an easy childhood. It wasn't easy going into adulthood. And it was the end of a marriage. I was 17 years married, and I was just deeply depressed and pretty suicidal at that stage. I had tried previously in my youth twice to commit suicide, but luckily didn't. And I was at that point at the end of a marriage as well, again, where those thoughts were coming in. And then suddenly I was hit with an illness, which I just thought really just added to the burden of everything I was carrying at the time. So it was like an MS illness, was lots of things going wrong. They said my brain was prematurely aging like a 70-year-old, and there was all sorts of stuff like that going on. But in the middle of it, I kind of had a crazy idea that I may have maybe contributed to that illness somehow through the stress I was under. So I started doing an awful lot of research on stress, and it was quite amazing. Um, I started looking at my thoughts and how they can affect our reality, and how they can affect our emotions. So that, in a way, long story short, I don't want to go into all of this. I've spoken about this before some places. I managed to get rid of the illness within a few months, and I had obviously a blood clotting issue had started with that illness, and that took about 8 months to disappear. But I got rid of all of that stuff, and in the process, I started working with my thoughts. And by working with my thoughts, I started to change my feelings. So I was able to lift myself out of the depression that had held me for years and years and years and kept me in misery and pain. So as a process of that, as I say, the thoughts, really very important, was to find out that your thoughts create feelings. And usually this is just coming from my point of view, from my experience of it. I saw that my emotions, my feelings, were telling me where I was. They were telling me where my thoughts were. And I thought, I feel bad. That's it. That's the end. I'll go to bed. I'm depressed, kind of thing. But then I started working with this. I saw that, I could feel like that, and I could be lying in bed, and then I could start talking to myself and saying, okay, well, what kind of thoughts are you having here? And they were all doom and gloom and negative thoughts, and they were all linked in with I'd been watching kinds of films that would bring me down, or I was watching the news, or I was reading all the usual drama, or getting caught up in all the fear stuff that you see all over the world. So I stopped all of that. It took a process now. I said, this is about 8 years I've been doing this now. But within a very short time, that was in 2009, 2008, 2009. But 2010, I was kind of really lifted up. And most days I wasn't going down. And if I was going down, I could actually talk myself back out of it. Now, as I say, I've been back and forth over the last couple of years. I haven't always had good days, but I've always been able to talk myself out of it and not being able to get myself back into that state of depression where I was. So just wanted to share that with you. Have a look if you are depressed, and it's not easy, because I know when you're down, you're down. You have no energy or anything, you're completely drained. But if you get a day where you're sort of okay, if you start becoming aware of the type of thoughts you're thinking and just see how they're making you feel. Have a look at that. And if you want to do this just for a moment, just close your eyes for a moment if you want to, and just think about something that makes you terribly, terribly sad. And just sit with that for a few seconds. And then just open your eyes again, because I'm not into torturing people. And then just close your eyes for a moment and just think of something that makes you terribly, terribly happy. Or wonderfully, wonderfully happy, rather. Something that makes you smile and joyous and happy. If you can. It's not easy. If you're down, it's not easy. Something, anything. Scent of a flower. Sound of a bird. Anything. and just open your eyes again and just think about that and what has happened there. And that's only a small thing. Your thoughts have the power to make you feel good or to make you feel bad. And that's what I discovered. And I just thought this was an amazing, liberating thing, that it was a small thing I could do. Suddenly I wasn't as powerless as I thought I was. I had the power. I couldn't control my thoughts. Nobody can control their thoughts, but you can stop them controlling you. And that's powerful. That's absolutely powerful. So I just wanted to share that small thing with you about that. So I'm not saying you'll never be depressed again. I don't think there is a cure for this. I think, life is going to keep coming at you in different and challenging you in different ways. But if you can, when you feel strong enough to challenge those thoughts, you can maybe sometimes bring yourself back up. Now, back in those early days, I would have been, I suppose, I never really heard the word bipolar back then, but I suppose I would have been very high at some times and very low at other times. And at the high times, I was highly creative. I'd be waking up in the middle of the night writing poetry or, coming up with fantastic ideas for paintings, and they were wonderful days in that sense, but the lows got really low. And I suppose by doing the work I have been with my thoughts and my feelings, I don't tend to swing high or low anymore. I suppose it would be equivalent to what the medications they give you would do, is that they keep you at a balance. So you never get too high or you never get too low. Now, I'm not saying I never get too high or too low, but generally it's much more balanced now. And I kind of like the highs anyway, because they're my highly creative days. I'm sitting here in a cabin that's especially for my artwork. And you see there's an Indian behind me here. That was one of my creative moments last year on an art course, and I was just buzzing on that, and I was on a high. But what the difference between this now is that I get a high, it doesn't mean I'm going to get a low after it, whereas before I would have, because again, I can reason it out. But look, this is painful work, and it takes time, and it takes persistence, and you really do have to have the energy to actually attempt that as well. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is low self-esteem. And some of you out there, an awful lot of people have low self-esteem. And we learn it from when we're children. We're looking around us, we're not being encouraged. I don't know, it depends on the age group that's listening and watching this video right now, but I say I'm 52. I know my parents weren't given great self-esteem, and I know their parents weren't either. So you go back 7 generations or more, and you're going to see that people weren't brought up to believe in themselves. They really weren't brought up to be encouraged. I know when I was growing up later on in my later years, it was seen as an American thing. But even I don't think people in America had that much self-esteem building either. It's great that we have personal growth now, and there's books on everything, there's videos on everything, but that wasn't really around or available to me when I was growing up. So I kind of grew up that there was something wrong with me, constantly in search of perfection and always looking sort of to improve myself, but never feeling good enough. And that colored everything. It colored, I mean, I left school at 15. I didn't feel good enough to be in school. Then I couldn't really get any good jobs because I hadn't got the education. And again, I hadn't got the self-esteem to push myself in those jobs. And then I went back to school. When I was in my 20s, I went back and did a bit of adult learning education. And again, I hadn't got the confidence or the self-esteem to see myself, push myself further to do anything, to finish anything. And it's only really in the last couple of years, actually, that I started training again. I trained as a hypnotherapist and obviously fully qualified with that and practiced. So I had my confidence there for that. And the same with the Reiki. I went on to be a practitioner. And then recently, then as I trained as a life coach and went on, and I've written a book and I'm writing my second one now. So it's only in the last few years. And again, it was linked in with our core beliefs. And I did an awful lot of work on that, on myself with that core beliefs, and just going in there and finding out the things I was saying to myself and the agreements I'd made with myself about those things. And some things were said to me as a child that I just took on and just agreed with. I was told I was a waster, so I just agreed with that. I was no good. And I've been telling myself that for a long number of years. And even with doing this work, occasionally the thought will keep coming back into your head. And do you know what I just say to it? I just come back and I speak back and I say, no, do you know what? I'm actually doing the best I can with what I know now. And when I know better, I'll actually do better. And I don't actually beat myself up anymore. And I became aware of my self-talk. And it's a voice in your head. it could be the voice of your mother or your father or a teacher or something, but it's nearly on repeat, and you keep hearing it every time you do something or you feck up or something like that. That voice is in your head, you know. Now there's other voices can be in your head as well. We're like radio transmitters. I mean, some people are not open to this, but I firmly believe this. But now a belief is just a thought you keep thinking, so I might change this belief at some stage. But you know, we can actually access voices from other dimensions and realities as well. Okay, so not every voice in your head is a good voice, and it doesn't mean necessarily that you're schizophrenic as well. You don't have to listen. You'll hear voices, you'll hear promptings and stuff. It's just that we're picking up, we're energetic beings, and we're picking up on stuff. I mean, I work with spirit guides and stuff like that, so I'm picking up on stuff. Psychics will work with other things as well, spirit guides and mediums and all. They're all picking up on this different information, and they'll hear voices as well, you know. And they're not mad either, you know. But just to be aware that there's different entities in different dimensions, and they're not all highly evolved, you know. So sometimes you can hear voices, but like I say, you have the power. You don't have to accept everything you hear in your mind. You can argue with it. Do you know what I mean? Or you can just say, like, I'm not accepting that, or, you know, that's not the way I am. I don't agree with that. If a voice is putting you down or saying things to you, you don't have to agree with that. You know, you can say no, you know, tell it, talk to the hand, you know, I'm doing the best I can here, you know, and I'm improving, you know. But it's been a hard slog. I mean, having low self-esteem for all those years has it's been tough going, you know, and I didn't know how to talk back to the thoughts way back then. So I suffered from that, you know, and it kept me from pushing myself forward, you know. But as I say, I don't listen to the thoughts that don't encourage me now. So I encourage the voices that, you know, encourage me. And they're my own voice. It's my own voice in my own head, you know. I don't beat myself up anymore. So just to be aware, if you've low self-esteem, you don't have to keep beating yourself up, you know. Why would you keep punishing yourself, you know? We are good enough and we are perfect, you know. And the other thing I learned about myself then later on was that I'm actually an empath. Now, in the early years, I was so disconnected from myself and so disconnected from everybody else. It was like I was going around with a veil between me and everything. It was like it was trying to cushion me from everything, from experiencing things too deeply. Or maybe I was with the depression, experiencing things way too deeply, but I wasn't as aware as I've become in the last few years. I discovered when I started doing the Reiki, when I started practicing Reiki, I was taking on people's pain. If they had pain, I didn't realize what was going on. They would come to me and I'd pick up on their pain and they'd go off and I'd have the pain then for the rest of the week. And it took me a while to realize that what was happening, you know. And sometimes I'd be walking down the street and maybe I'd pass people and suddenly a wave of despair would hit me, or I'd be driving in the car and suddenly a wave of despair would hit me and I'd carry that on with me and think it was something belonging to myself, you know. It took me a while and a bit of spiritual practice to actually start tapping into actually what was mine and what wasn't mine, you know, because I was taking on the weight of the world literally. And that, I think, in the early years was probably adding to my depression as well, you know. So the healing work has been powerful for me, and it was literally a small little exercise that would help you if you think you might be an empath or that you're taking on stuff that's not yours, would be to actually find out who you actually are yourself, you know. And we can only do that by finding a quiet, sacred space for ourselves somewhere where you won't be disturbed, and to actually sit quietly or lie down and to just breathe slowly, breathe really, really slowly. And you can breathe into your chest or breathe into your belly is a nice deep breath. Imagining the breath is traveling all the way up from your fingers all the way up your arms to your head and your chest and down into your belly on your in breath, and breathing out very, very slowly out through your legs, your feet and your toes on the out breath, and doing that a few times very slowly and as deeply as you possibly can. And then imagining a light, if you like, coming from the top of your head and traveling all the way down through your body and out through your feet and grounding you into the earth's core, if you like. It's just a visualization. You can imagine what you like. You can imagine you're a tree if you want, just to ground yourself. And that kind of centers you, you know. And then you imagine where your energy is. So you start noticing where your thoughts are. And you start seeing, you know, that your thoughts might be with the kids, or they might be with a job situation, or they might be with a row or an argument you had, or, you know, where are your thoughts? So you start imagining them as if they were little streams of light, and you start pulling those cords back to you. And that's your energy. You're calling it back to you. You're bringing all your energy back. And you're imagining it, all that energy is coming back, and it's building up a light in a center core of you, like a pillar of light. So you're bringing all your energy back. And you're surrounding yourself, then when you've brought it all back, wherever your energy was, wherever your thoughts are, that's where your energy is. You pull your energy right back into you. You surround yourself with, you can imagine this yourself, a golden cocoon of light, if you like, or whatever you want to do yourself. This is what works for me. You know, everyone has a different kind of way. There's no right or wrong in any of this, just whatever works for you, you know. So you bring back this beautiful core of light around you, you know, and you sit with that for a few moments. Now that's your energy. That's you in this moment, okay? There's a sense of peace in there, okay? There's a sense of peace and serenity and harmony and equilibrium, or whatever you want to call it, and that's there, and that's you. Now that's your energy, okay? So if you're an empath, or you're a person who seems to take on an awful lot of things, if you do that on a regular basis, you'll know your energy. So what would happen to me then, when I started doing this, I would start a session, if I was doing a Reiki session, or even a hypnotherapy session, or anything I'm doing, working with anybody, even if I'm going out onto the street or something. If I bring that core of energy with me, I know my own energy. And I know when I'm picking up on something else. If I pass someone and I feel a pain, or I feel despair, I know that that's not mine. So I can send a blessing or healing or something to that person, and I can walk on by. I don't need to take it with me. And it's the same when I'm in a Reiki session with somebody. I have that center core. That's me. I know what is mine. And if I'm feeling something before the person even gets to me, I know that that's not me, do you know? And I can send the blessing or the healing or whatever, you know? So this is quite powerful, you know? And as an empath, even a sensitive person, you're picking up on stuff from other people. You don't have to do that. And you don't actually have to be drained by anybody you don't want to be drained by. So when you're centered like that, if you think of people who are draining, you can actually send their energy back to them. Because if they're draining you, they have your energy. That means they're thinking about you. Okay? So you can start seeing the cords and ties that maybe energetically have you attached. And you can start sending those cords and ties right back to that person or situation. And you can see a center core of light appearing around the person or situation. And you can surround it with a golden cocoon of light if you want to. And send a blessing that all the energy goes back to them. And you're not sending anything bad back to the person, even if it is not a nice situation or a negative situation. Send them back some blessings, because what we do to others, we do to ourselves. It's all energetic work. It's probably too deep to go into in this video, but everything we wish for someone else, we're wishing for ourselves. Everything comes back. It comes back to us like a boomerang. So just don't send anything bad out there, you know. Send blessings only to people. We're all at different stages of awareness. So you can send that energy back and let them be surrounded with the golden cocoon then as well for healing, and send that energy back. And then you won't be drained yourself with that, you know. So I hope you found this very useful. Please feel free to comment or to share, or if you have any questions, or if you want me to make any other videos on anything particular, please let me know. I'm more than delighted to help. Thank you. Bye.